Guys, welcome. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's 5 p.m. on Thursday. It is, happy hour somewhere. Not for Vidoria because he's on Central Time, but for me for sure. So we appreciate everybody who's still on and focusing on the World Staffing Summit. I don't know where he just went, but that's okay. We're gonna go through a bunch of really interesting points about data and analytics reporting. So for housekeeping, obviously these are recorded. When Vidor comes back, we'll be in good shape here. But so they're recorded. You can watch them on the replay on the left. There he is. Where'd you go?
I am not pressing any buttons anymore.
Don't press anything for the rest of the time. Yeah, please. So yeah, you can check it out later. If you haven't checked out Andre's talk, the first talk, it was amazing about the experience economy. He's an expert at talking about that stuff. I've been following him for a long time. The session where they were talking about the bold predictions and someone talked about like climbing to the top of like a cell tower. The head of the House of HR from Belgium, she was so cool. All the stuff she's done to like promote House of HR was really cool. So if you haven't checked out those sessions, they're going to be in the replay, as well as this one. And for other housekeeping, I don't think we have it, but we'll just get started here. So quick intros, Vidor, who are you and what do you do?
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Vidor Bali. I am, my title is Vice President of Business Intelligence and Analytics at Newbury Partners. I've been in this space since 2005, so graduate from Syracuse University. And
Go Orange.
Yeah, go Orange, always. Go Qs. I'm sure if Josh is on, he'll give us a shout out as well. And just really started my journey as a report developer / analyst back in the day, and realized your reports are only as good as the data that it's fed. Right? You can have the prettiest visualizations, but if the data that it's feeding it is wrong, then obviously it amounts to nothing. So quickly realized that and jumped into the data side of the house. And then along the way did some really interesting projects of all sizes across different verticals and financials, healthcare, manufacturing, and now finally staffing. I ran my own company for about 7 years till it got acquired by Newbury early 2022. So here I am.
And you've been rocking with Newbury ever since. We appreciate that. So my name is Rob Mann. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Newbury, also the co-host of a podcast with Lauren Jones, the You Own the Experience podcast. We'll drop a link in the chat for both of our socials and the podcast in a second here. But if Aaron Mack, if you want to go grab that, that would be fantastic. I appreciate you. And then I've been in the industry since 2012 as a recruiter, went into the technology side in 2018, been a part of a few acquisitions as well, and recently joined Newbury to head up sales and help the team continue to expand. And Vidor has been incredible since I've joined. Just really cool to see all this really interesting stuff that we build. So very excited. So first things first, maybe we want to open it up for y'all to ask any questions that you have about reporting at the moment. If anything, like strategic, anything that you're struggling with, maybe we wanted to open it up to you first before we jump in. We're going to talk a lot about data sources, data quality, data warehouses, data lakes, all that stuff, like combining data. But if you have any questions to start, feel free to throw them in the chat. We would love to see, because everyone else did a panel today, guys, and we're a 2-man show. So we could have scripted this completely, but we figured we would open it up for you guys. So any questions you have, you throw them in the chat. We'll give you a second, and we'll be happy to jump in there. Otherwise, Vidor has a math quiz for y'all, and I don't think it's going to be a good way to start this off. So no questions? All right. Well, then we're gonna have to do the math quiz, Vidor. By the way, did you do that survey? Did you create that survey that you wanted to do?
Yeah. Well, instead of giving them a boring PowerPoint, we can.
There we go.
Here come the questions.
All right. So, what's the best way to ensure data integrity? I think we're going to cover that in. Well, we got a thumbs up, so maybe we'll tackle that one.
Well, that's a loaded question, Rob.
All right. How to the best ensure data integrity?
Yeah. Well, one thing is just make sure it goes in correctly, right? That would be the obvious.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to take data out, ensuring it all ties out, Rob, in a warehouse, typically there's yeah.
Appreciate it. Do you have a game, Rob, about those loaded questions?
And I'd say, there's ways and means when you pull your data out to ensure, right, that there's no duplication. And depending on the type of data you're pulling out, you can come up with what a good formula is. And every time you pull data out, you just make sure that formula is always the same,
Okay.
right? And so again, depending on the data, like with candidate, it might be emails, right? How do you check for data integrity on emails? With placements, it might be how do I trust the status is correct, right? So yeah, it just depends on the data. But we typically in a warehouse will build unique keys. We'll do things like data duplication, right? There's other keys that we build that signify a record is good and valid.
Okay.
So
I think what you're saying.
Right. Best thing though is make sure data goes into the system correctly. That's the easiest thing to do. Goes
in correctly, and then depending on what entity you're working in, whatever this, every system has entities or objects, whatever they call them. Ensuring that the 5 to 10 data points that are super important.
Yeah, Rob, I'd add to that. Make sure on your ATS systems field, the ones that you're really interested in are mandatory, right? That they all get picked, and don't allow for free text. I think someone else was saying that somewhere, but
free text, yeah.
Give them values to pick from. So make sure your pick lists in any of your systems is what you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So I find that I had that conversation a lot because obviously, guys, you'll hear me say this, but there's 3 things that rely on good data, right? Automation, AI, and analytics or reporting. And you would have this moment where we'd be building out automations and trying to use values. And if it's not a structured data field, it would be a nightmare to get stuff out of it. So I also recommend 7 to 8 fields as required for a salesperson. I am a salesperson. Bador, sometimes he plays one on TV from time to time. But the level of attention and detail and the way that salespeople operate, it's really hard for us to always do those things. So don't make it more than 7 or 8. Otherwise, you might lose adoption. It's a best practice. Yeah, profile URLs are key for us. The manual import is a pain point. Manual import is a pain point. What does that mean, Robert? That's an interesting one. By the way, Game of Thrones, great walkout song. Courtney, you want me to say Kylo Data Tools is a fantastic data management tool and mass update system? It is. So if you're on Bullhorn and you want to pay a pretty interesting thing, talk to Court. You're welcome, Courtney. Wait, we go back up. We got to go back up. We'll do this one.
Bradley had one that said, how important are stakeholder interviews when designing your data ecosystem?
That one, yeah, I wanted to get to that one for sure. Good question.
Yeah, great question. Critical. If you have buy-in from your sponsors that your data, that they're part of your data journey, Bradley, you have to build what they're asking for. So, very, very important, I would say.
Yeah, awesome. And what else we got here? Recommendations around cleaning it, maintaining a clean database, right? I think maybe we'll jump ahead here with just thinking of that AI is going to be really helpful in maintaining a clean database at some point in the near future.
Yeah, I've got this theory of what is it? Crawl, walk, run, right? So run might be the AI bit, right? Crawl might just be most of us, when we start these data projects, realize data is bad when it's being pulled out. We know at some level inherently as we get reports, it's off because 9 times out of 10 we're talking to customers. They're like, how would you rate the quality of your data? And some are really strong. Some are like, well, we haven't done a cleanse in a while, right? And you can set really simple things like imagine if on a job record, right, you had 7 things that you always wanted populated. You can very easily write reports to say, give me all my jobs that don't have this correctly defined or have null values, just simple things like that. And if you replicate that across your candidates, your placements, your notes, your opportunities, leads, whatever that data set might be, then you get to work on this daily, right? It's date I fear most companies ignore it till it's too late. And the warehouse only highlights how bad your data is, right? It's a chance to course correct, and you're expending money on that data journey. But small things, just daily receiving automated emails that say, here's 7 placements that were entered yesterday that are missing these 3 things that we track. Just have someone go fix it. It's as simple as that, right? You have volumes of data, right? Like more than 1 million records for placement. Sure, go down the track of writing and using AI to help you there. But we have some amazing technical people that can write code based on lists and clean your data for you, right? So data cleansing happens on a daily basis. Data validation, there's amazing companies out there that help you validate emails, addresses, phone numbers, right? That we work with, that we've partnered with. And then, lastly, I would say AI. So that run would be the AI, but that's ongoing. You've got to teach the AI how to fix what's wrong first and detect what's wrong, right? So all 3, no right or wrong answer, but depending on where you are in your journey, there's always an easier solution than spend money.
Yeah, there's definitely some good companies that are coming into the space. I think what we're finding is with automation and the hype of AI and the threat of it being so important soon, right? Yeah. It's important now, but I think we're in a hype cycle.
Yeah.
So I think that people are getting really invested in their data quality. And then these partners that are coming are really doing a good job of that. Last question, maybe we'll jump in. What are the best ways to use data to improve recruitment strategies? I think that one is right up your alley, big guy.
Yeah, so we see this all the time, right? Everyone, every staffing firm that we work with, and here's the cool part. Every time I think I know what the answer is, they'll surprise me by giving me a metric that's just unique to them, right? Except they haven't been monitoring it, saving it, or analyzing that metric. And so I'd say as a leadership team, right, as a staffing, having a leadership team for your company, get to know what your metrics are, right? And then if you're not monitoring those metrics, whether that's weekly, quarterly, or yearly, you're not going to know if your strategy is working or not, right? And so if you as a company are looking to say, my recruiters are going to make 10 phone calls a day, right? And that's 40 phone calls a week, and you don't monitor that, right? And your job board is not going up, it's kind of unsteady or maybe going down, then you clearly know there's a problem. But if you don't monitor it or don't pay attention to it, it's not going to go anywhere. So we have a great example of that coming up as we're going to talk about just data stories. And so I have a couple of tidbits to share. Great question, Aaron. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. So we're going to get a little bit of what we prepared for you guys. It's going to start with a bunch of stories, as we're known to do, because what is a good story without some good data? And I'll let Vidor kind of kick it off. So we're going to start to set the scene of how we could think about data in different ways and utilizing it.
Yeah, we as we thought of what to the name of this is to data or not to. I think people are fearful because they feel they don't understand these heavy terminologies like data lake or metrics or analytics, and kind of scares them into something that it's really not. But I think the way I describe it to most people is we're all producing more data, and and when I say producing, literally, like as humans, you look at our credit cards, right? If you think of the easiest way to think of data is just look at ourselves. And if you look at your credit card statements, your bank statements, even your debit card statements as an example, some of you travel and you look at points like I need 6 nights to get to Marriott Gold or 2 free nights at the Hyatt, right? Whatever it is, there's 2 things. One is you're looking at the data, and then second, you've set a benchmark that you want to achieve, right? And that in itself, if you kind of know your way around that, you already know how to work with data. It's just in a different context. This might be from a work standpoint, right? So to us, it really is, what do you want to track? And then what's the benchmark for it, right? So for example, if you wanted to save, and let's say you want to save $1,000 this year, and I look back at my average savings, and it's only $10 a month, it's going to take a really long time to save $1,000, right? Or some drastic changes need to be made. And it's funny, a lot of companies go through this where they'll start to define metrics and they'll be like, this is important. but they don't have any context to why this is important, right? So to me, context is definitely relevant to how you look at your numbers, right? For example, if I said 100 million, most people would be like, oh, that sounds really nice, right? But if I add the word debt to it, that's appalling, right? 100 million in debt versus 100 million in credit, two completely different statements, right? And two different reactions. Similarly, if you looked at something like 100 placements a month, we're making 100 placements a month. Jan was a great month. We made 100. It seems great, but if you looked historically and Jan had 200 placements, you're actually 50% off your highs, right? As good as that number looks. And so when you start this data journey, initially it's just going to be like, can we capture it? But then very quickly, you need to start to set some comparisons, some benchmarks, some industry standards. And a lot of this is out there available. The ASA does a great job.
ASA, yeah.
Does a great job of providing some of this. And if you start to bring that in and benchmark yourself, you'll clearly find, are you a leader in that arena or you're kind of lagging, right? And gives you, outside of your gut, which, you're all business owners and leaders in your own right, help give you that little edge on, yep, I was thinking about this the right way or the wrong way, right? So I think, Rob, these were my small ideas. You've got bigger ideas.
Yeah, so thinking about like using holistic data, like pulling in data from all these places, right? So like everyone's read the movie Moneyball, I read the book Moneyball. And then there's a story about policing in Chicago, and then directive AI, right? So like, what do those three things have in common? A lot of use of data. So if you're not familiar with Moneyball, the Oakland A's is a baseball team out of Oakland, California. They had a $40 million budget for their roster, whereas like the Yankees have 115 million in 2002. So the A's used analytics from all of the players to get like a bunch of high C's and B players who just got on base and got hits all the time to win 100 games in 2002 and make it to the playoffs. So they were trying to solve a very specific problem, right? Like, how do we use the 40 million we have versus this massive budget that the Yankees have or the Red Sox have? And this means nothing to you. It's okay. But you get little pool of money, big pool of money. How do you get the most out of it? And it's by finding the people who get on base the most, right? So I thought that was fascinating. It's a really good story of data and using all the MLB, like the Major League Baseball has data for every batter. So you can use that to find who you wanted to attract, right? Like I'd hire Vador because he bats 100 when he goes into the sales situations. All right. Anyway, the other one, Climb in Chicago. So I'm a huge podcast nerd, and Freakonomics Radio, if you don't listen to it, it's a fantastic podcast. Stephen Dubber, shout out to the Dub. Episode 567 is called Do Police Have a Management Problem? And it was fascinating. And so 2015 to 2016 in Chicago, about like 300% rise in homicides. I know it's terrible to talk about, but the way that Chicago was broken out, there was a central data hub and they had 0 data analysts there. And so they hired a detective from LA. The guy comes to Chicago, sets up little hubs in each neighborhood with a bunch of data analysts. So they go from having 0 data analysts in their police department to 100. And all of a sudden you get leaders in these little precincts or in these neighborhoods that they're patrolling. And it was Englewood first in Chicago. And the crime is going down because the police officers are being deployed where they're seeing trends. What's funny, and not funny, but like crime goes back up the year after they set this up because they didn't train the people who came in as they got promoted to use the data to deter the crime. And so once they started training them again how to use data, the crime rate went back down, right? So that was fascinating on how to use data. And then directive AI, I said it before, right? You need good data quality for reporting, automation, and AI to work well. So if you're gathering really large data sets and inputs, right, what you need to do is use that data to eventually get to the point where you are basically telling a recruiter or salesperson, hey, Vidor just signed up at this website or looked at this job, looked at this blog post. You should probably send him an email that says this. Or, hey, Vidor got rejected from these 2 jobs. And then all of a sudden, probably Tamper, yeah. So he got rejected from these 2 jobs, but he's a really good fit for these 3. Reach out to him and maybe mention this selling point to him about why he should let you represent him for these jobs. So the directive AI is really reliant on big data sets, and I'm really excited to we're getting closer to that all the time, right? Any thoughts on all those really nerdy stories I just shared, Vidor?
I think they're all great respectively. I think the underlying theme across them is the same, right? Different roles, right? The data was always there, but people looked at it slightly differently, right? And that was their competitive edge.
Yep.
I think every company that we talk to has data. Sometimes they're not even aware they have that data, right? Because it's all siloed sometimes.
Yeah.
You just have to know it's there and then use it to your advantage, really, and just start that journey, right?
Yeah.
And to that fact, Rob, I think you made an interesting point there. You said the next set of people didn't know how to read that same data set that was already there and react to it. And so that training, which is as an organization, it can't just be 1 or 2 people. As an organization, you need to move in the same direction of we've got to leverage our metrics, and we've all got to be on the same page when it comes to understanding what this is telling us.
Yeah. So, by the way, in that episode of Freakonomics Radio about that, the Crime Lab in Chicago, it's an organization out of UChicago. They basically started holding an MBA for policing, and they have their first class going through, or a couple first classes coming through. So super interesting. And part of that is obviously there's some talk of trauma and how to deal with crowds, but it's also how to use the data for prevention, right? So if you don't check out, if you're not a Freakonomics fan, I don't know if we can be friends. All right. Anyway, Vidor, we said meaningful data. We've said all these platforms. We've told a few stories, just kind of set the mood for this idea that because of AI and I'm going to steal your line here, how cheap it is now to store data, we're starting to put all of people's data into one place, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what is that? You can tell everyone what it is, what it's called, but also, kind of work with people, tell them what it means now that we can get all that data into one place. And I think we've already given some stories about it, but more focused on recruitment.
Yeah. So I think you'll hear this term, let's put all your data in a central place, and they'll typically use a word like lake or data lake. They'll call it data lake. And then you might hear a word after that might say data warehouse. And then you're like, what the hell? I just learned what data lake means. Now, what is data warehouse? So I think the word data lake was coined back in 2011. It was the original owner of a tool called Pentaho. It's a tool that used to extract data back in the day. And his meaning, or what he was trying to say with lake, was it's where all your data is, where all your water is, if you think about it, or all your data is, but you can't really drink from it, right? It's got impurities. It's high in salt. There's a lot of fish in it. Maybe some dead fish in a corner, right? So that's kind of how your data is when we bring it all in. If you think of a warehouse that sits above it, that's been refined, it's been validated, it's been cleansed, it's been transformed. So simple example of a transformation might be, on the front end of your screen, you see a yes and no flag, or you see yes and no as the answer, or for client resume present. But in the database, it might be stored as a 1 and a 0. Right. And we've got to transform it from a 1 and 0 to a yes and no. It's simply put, right? Or you've got email addresses and they're missing @something.com, right? So again, that gets flagged. So those are the validation and the cleansing, right? So for anyone looking to go down this journey, Rob talked about a couple of things. One is, if you picked any of your data and stored it in one central location, and the easiest example I can give you of this, which you all probably do today, if not, you should. You all have centralized locations either on your network or in the cloud where you save your company's files. This could just be Excel. We use we use SharePoint, right, to centralize our files. You have OneDrive, things of this nature.
Google Drive.
Yeah. So think of that in the cloud, but with your company's data. So all your placements, all your financials, all your payroll, all your cloud call data is in one central location, right? That's what a data lake would look like. Budgets, I forgot. Budgets is a good one. Just helped a client last week on that. So, yeah. So does that answer your question, Rob, on where would they?
Yeah, and guys, just so you know, now when Vidor says the word data warehouse in a leadership meeting at Newberry, we all do like the Pee Wee Herman word of the day thing for him. It's very fun. Anyway, so yeah, no, absolutely. And Alex, thanks. I'm glad that was helpful. And so I think what was interesting too was I was doing some research, and some research I said was like bad data, whatever form that means, costs business. Like IBM found that bad data costs businesses like $3.1 billion, sometimes a year. So really fascinating that, what you said is get it into one place and then kind of clean it up and standardize it, right?
You have to, right? And what the Lakehouse also, or what the data lake also does, I was going further into now, it's called the Lakehouse versus river versus stream. Lots of I think
got upgraded to a house, huh? What is this?
Yeah, might be a geography lesson or something in the biological sciences. But going back to that question on this loss or this bad data, right? What you're also doing as an organization then is centralizing data that you trust, right? And companies that do this well will say, if it didn't come from these three places, it doesn't matter, right? Because people invariably have this habit of having an Excel file on their desktop, right? Where only they know what that secret formula is, or they're manipulating it a certain way. And the answer is no. If it's a number, if it's a shared goal across the metric, if everyone's looking at it, it has to be in one central location. Everyone goes to the same dashboard, and the number is the same across the executive team. There is no one having their own siloed data or working on siloed data. So bad data invariably has to be worked on. I'm not surprised that that's the case, Rob. In insurance and medical malpractice, that we see that a lot, right? That's vast volumes of data, right? And so yeah, it does not surprise, that number does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, and then you also have to. Well, my wife's a med mal attorney, so she often has a nurse going through the MedCron and trying to get that data organized, which is vitally important a lot of the times. Anyway, so you got a data lake. We got all the data standardized. We got it in one place. Now we have the opportunity to take advantage of it, right? So no Pee Wee Herman reaction from me, but how do we use a data warehouse to take advantage of it?
Yep. Okay. So best example I can give you is in your lake, you have, let's just say you've got your staffing data, whatever your database is, it's all in one location. And you've got your financials, which are sitting on a completely different platform, right? One has operational activity, the other actually has financial activity. And your warehouse would combine those two, right? As an example, you might say, well, we placed 500 people with Amazon as an example, right? Those are our actuals placed, but all your invoicing took place in your financials, right? You might have had budgets and financials for Amazon, right? And now you're comparing actuals to budgeted data in your true financials, not operationally.
Yeah,
that's the money that actually came through the door. Both systems sitting, side by side are pointless because each one has value, but together it just gives you an insight into your data that is beyond imagination. So I love the fact that you can do this. Yeah.
So you said something when we were prepping. You were like, most staffing companies that you find do AR and AP in different places.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly do invoicing in one system, right? And your financials that manage, your general ledger and your accounts could be a completely different system. And so if these are not synced, right? If these systems are not synced, right? Your payables are going into your financials and your invoices are going out of a completely different system, right? So again, I'm not saying everyone does it that way, but we see companies that do that.
Well, then you have, to what you said, like, you have a budget, you have actuals, you have your plan, or like your plan budget, whatever you want to call it. You have your actuals, but then you actually have what you received.
Yeah.
Right. And that could be, that's a pretty good place to be, I think, if you can all see it in one dashboard.
Oh
and
yeah,
not
yeah, for sure. I mean, imagine saying, we placed these 50 people this month, and your terms are 30 days, and you're in day 60, and you haven't seen a single dollar come through, right? Like,
you don't have a business.
yeah, but can you imagine like a financial dashboard that's telling you here's the people that are starting broken down by month, right? What the budget is, so you're kind of tracking to your budget, and then here's the true financials that the company made each month coming in for management to see on one page, and then maybe you slice and dice by, if you're in different verticals, you can see how we're doing in healthcare versus how we're doing in finance versus how we're doing in IT, potentially, right? Or light industrial for that matter. Extremely, extremely powerful, right? And I'm only saying this because we built stuff like this. This is not my imagination. This is exactly what we built for clients.
So you often talk about like you don't need to be, a global 5 staffing company to take advantage of a data warehouse, both internally and maybe externally. So what are some examples maybe for the smaller, like the SMB groups?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for the SMBs, right, the simplest form of warehouse is actuals and budgets. Right?
Okay, so that what we just talked about.
Just those two. And budgets, guess what? You don't have a system. It's typically in Excel, right?
Okay.
That's where they're stored. You're taking your actuals out. You're doing it all in Excel. And instead of doing it in Excel, go down this warehouse path. It's not going to be significant dollars to put those two together, right? You'll be surprised. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
And then as you move up, like you're getting, 150 million, 100 million, 200 million.
Yep. That's where we start to see, ATS systems and finance systems coming together. In some cases, ATS, on the far side, we see ATS, finance, payroll, phone, voice over IP, phone setups come into the picture. Commissions, right? A lot of times, sometimes commissions are easy. Sometimes they're their own set of directives, and each human can have his own algorithm on how that's computed in tenure rate.
I'm laughing at the conversation we had this week where I said your commissions are easy, right? And they were like, yeah, we have, it's very straightforward. We do perm. And then like 20 minutes later in the conversation, they were like, oh no, we do perm and temp, and the temp side is a nightmare. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I mean, even in that example, commissions could, just commissions outside of your actual ATS is a little mini warehouse that you're putting together, right? If just for
because you're doing it in Excel and it's got complicated tables and numbers and
and
it takes 9 hours to create each week, or
more. Yeah. Or probably, I think on average we see 3 or 4 days of people bringing data down, because you've got to double check it. They have to be paid out, right? It's at month end.
Don't mess with people's money.
Yeah, you can't afford to get it wrong, right? We see people copy paste incorrect cells all the time, and it's happened enough times where they've got burned to where this becomes a burning desire to solve, and
that makes sense.
We get called.
And then how do you see it? How do you see that, like a data warehouse being used as a competitive advantage for a company, maybe working with not candidates, but with their customers or clients?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we've talked about with metrics, right, are typically internal facing, right? That's what you're using to drive your people to deliver more for you or to grow. Yeah. I'd say most businesses that are getting more business is because they're leveraging their internal metrics to share with their clients, right, on a monthly basis, how they're serving their needs, right? Yeah. And so it's gone from this is only for internal consumption to, if I can produce a report for my client that says, hey, our average days to staff, right, or average days to close, or our fill ratio, as you guys call it, right, is X, Y, and Z. And for this job, it's been trending lower every single time you've come back to us. I mean, that's pretty compelling to earn business every single time, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of, you're giving yourselves the opportunity to write your own report card in a way, right? But also verbalizing that report card to your clients to say how good you are, right? Clients don't get to see you making the phone calls. They don't get to see you talk to the candidates, right? They don't get to see you making internal decisions to get them the best candidate. This is your way to visualize what's happening behind the scenes and show them how hard you're working. And really that's the differentiator between you and the person that's not doing that.
Yeah. One of the things I like to say is like, if you're like, we were tracking different metrics, right? But like, if you would say like, if I submitted somebody today and your average so I submit to you, Vidor, and your average time to get me feedback is within 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we have like an A+ relationship. And then you have a coworker who I also submit, talent to and get job recs from, and they take 72 to maybe a week.
Right.
And that person thinks that I'm not a great vendor, but you think I am. But in reality,
yeah,
I can go coach that person and be like, hey, I work with 5 people like Vidor, and here's how this works.
Yeah.
If I get feedback fast, we get really great outcomes. But if I get feedback really slow, the candidate's popular, they're a great candidate, and now we have a different issue, right? So it's really interesting ways to do that. All right, Vidor, we're getting a little short on time, which we didn't think was going to happen, by the way. So let's just jump to, what are you foreseeing the future of these data warehouses, reporting technology, and more importantly, how's it going to affect our industry, the staffing and recruiting industry?
I think more and more people are going to start leveraging technology at some point. If they haven't started their journey, it's reached a place where you can get started for very little. Back in the day, right, hardware was expensive. You needed to go to someone, they charge you
server on site,
thousands of dollars, right? Now, I mean,
I think what you said technology. I think you meant like storing data.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the technology
and the associated software. Okay.
Yeah, even the software that stores it, right, is not that expensive, right? So I'd say companies that are not thinking about it are kind of going to be behind the 8 ball going into, they're already behind the 8 ball if they haven't thought about it, right? But technology is a great leveler, and it doesn't matter when you start leveraging it. If you have a competitive advantage using it, you can always play catch up, right? But that's the key word. You're still playing catch up, right? To the people that have already started this journey, are already making the decisions, are already using these scorecards, right, to their advantage. And so we're going to get to this point where like these when we talk about data, it's just going to be synonymous. All of it will be co-located at, in some fashion. And technology companies are also understanding that they need to be able to give their clients mechanisms to take data out, right, and work with other vendors and partners to enable two-way communication almost. So I think technology will enable companies to be more efficient, leaner, and more productive. But you have to start down this data path. And I know you've been talking about AI this entire thing, Rob. I'll just make this comment, right? And AI is only as good as the data you feed it. You feed it bad data, and it learns that 30% utilization is great. That's what it's going to learn. It's like a baby that you mold, right? And so it grows up thinking, this is okay. And really, you have to have just really high quality data to even think about going into large language models and machine learning and AI. So just and for smaller companies, that doesn't matter at all, right? But for the larger companies who think AI is the answer, a lot of data prep needs to be done prior to even thinking about AI.
Got it. All right, real quick, I'm going to drop our 5 takeaways in here that Vidor set up for you guys. So they're in the chat. If we'll post, hold on, it might be too big. Oh, it's too big. That's no fun. All right, I'm going to fix this and make it smaller.
There was I think there was a question that.
Oh yeah. Do you want to go through those 5 takeaways though, real quick, and then we'll answer those 2 questions? But go through quick. So we have some time.
Yeah. So I think our 5 takeaways, or the ones that we wrote, if you're still typing them on, Rob, is easy to go back and go, do you or your teams use data to make decisions on a daily basis, right? And then the next thing that you should ask yourself is if they're making decisions, then are they trained to leverage this data effectively? Okay. Second takeaway is data projects do not have to be complex. You can simply take data out as step 1, and you're already on your way. Make a list of your data sources, right? It's easy. You can do it on the back of a napkin. You have an ATS system, you have a financial system, do you use Excel, do you use Notepad, do you use, ADP, whatever your payroll system is, etc. Just put all them down, draw a circle around it. That's what your lake needs to have. right? Sometimes you have a lot less, sometimes you have a lot more, but if your answer is 2 or higher, you need a lake,
Yep.
right? And then I think the imperative question is, when you draw that circle and you've got these dots in the middle, you have to ask yourself, do they talk to each other, right? And without a doubt, almost always the answer is yes, because, right, the simple thing is, my recruiter made a call, love to have it logged in the ATS as an example, right? We have a placement record. Can we take that placement ID and make that a line item on our accounting system GL, right? So I can look that up and go if we got paid or not. So systems inherently need to talk to each other. It's us that have to define processes to make sure that happens. And even those 5 or 4, I think we have one more, which is
One more. Yeah. Are you struggling with putting key reports together for your organization? So are you struggling to put reports together for your organization daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly? Trying to figure that out. Do you want to get to Lauren's question? We got 2 minutes, Vidor.
Yeah, I think there was a question about what tools to evaluate, and I'm not going to take for this because at Newberry we have an amazing data engineering team, and I have one of my best buddies, Josh, say, but here's what I would say. So hopefully I'll be able to elaborate on that a little more. But he puts it really succinctly. But when you talk about these add-on tools, right? There's no tool that can solve. If someone's telling you, oh, our tool can just read something and magically make your data great, right? They're probably lying to you. You need to know what that formula is, right? And so for us, it's do a data health check, right? Like, what is the current state of your data? Like, how many unique candidates do you have? Do you really have unique placements, right? And then once you identify what the bad data is, do bulk updates to get it to a good state, right? That's fix it, solve for it, and then make sure it doesn't happen again. Or you have, these barricades in place that make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? And so if you're going to put effort into cleaning it, right, which it takes time sometimes, you also need to make sure that it stays clean beyond that. So what can things to do beyond that in terms of mandatory fields and pick lists, right? Make sure that the data goes in clean or goes in a certain format, like a date is a date format. Phone number is, right, the ... dash ... dash, 4 dots. So if you can do things like that, your data will stay clean, but you have to stay on it. It's not like, every 2 years you wake up and go, how good or bad my data is. And so, start with the data health check.
All right.
Start with the data health check.
We're done. Vidor, thank you so much. Guys, if you enjoyed the session, please make sure you give us a good rating. We appreciate you. Get to the awards side to see. Number one, thank you, candidly. Thank you, Rupesh. Thank you, Jan, for having us. But definitely get into the award ceremony. And Vidor, thanks so much, man. It was great nerding out with you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in and saying.